Welcome to a journey where mystery and revelation walk hand in hand. Today, we're going to unravel one of the most intriguing enigmas of the Bible, the story of Cain and the dilemma of his family origins. We'll delve into the marital practices of early biblical times, discovering how they intertwine with divine laws and the development of humanity. We'll reveal the transformations brought about by Mosaic laws and how they shaped relationships and moral values over the centuries, in a dialogue that transcends time and directly touches the heart of our own experiences and beliefs. Join us in this exploration that promises not only to enlighten, but also to inspire your personal and spiritual journey. Have you ever found yourself reflecting on the enigmatic situation of Cain, one of the first descendants of Adam and Eve, as described in the sacred scriptures? How did he find a companion? And even more intriguingly, how did he procreate, considering Adam and Eve as the sole predecessors of humanity? As we delve into the nuances of the Bible, we will reveal the answers to this fascinating mystery. So, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and come with us on this journey of discovery. Cain, an emblematic figure in the scriptures, emerges as the eldest son of Adam and Eve, marking the dawn of humanity. His bond with Abel, his younger brother, becomes pivotal in the event of the sacrifice to God. In a gesture of devotion, both present their offerings to the Creator, but only Abel's offerings are graced with divine acceptance, while Cain's are scorned. The reason for this divine disfavor is an enigma that prompts various interpretations through the ages. Delving deeper into reflection, many question the essence of the offerings and speculate that perhaps the true problem lay within Cain's core, a possible negative predisposition that would have been decisive for his rejection. This setback triggered a growing bitterness within him, culminating in the most tragic narrative ever recorded in the scriptures. Driven by envy and rage, Cain perpetrates the unthinkable act of fratricide, taking Abel's life. This episode not only marks the initiation of human frailty and the depth of sin, but also echoes through the ages, imprinting a lasting scar on the biblical narrative as a warning about the weight of human decisions. God's response to Cain comes in the form of severe punishment. Divine wrath materializes in cursing Cain and marking him, making him a tangible emblem of his failure. This mark, whose details are not meticulously explained in the scriptures, symbolizes the distance and burden of the error that Cain would carry. The divine punishment transcends a mere physical curse. It encompasses psychological and emotional dimensions, outlining a bleak portrait of the repercussions of our choices. Condemned to wander as a nomad, Cain finds himself immersed in profound loneliness, distant from the divine presence. This exile subjects him to the relentless judgment of his own conscience, burdening him with the overwhelming weight of his deplorable action. Now distant from God and from the company of other human beings, his loneliness highlights the magnitude of the separation engendered by sin. The solitary wanderer emerges as an emblem of spiritual and emotional alienation, a vivid reflection of the direct repercussions of his deeds. The sacred narrative also reveals to us Cain's anguish, apprehensive about the burden of his curse and fearful of being killed if found. Faced with this unrest, God intervenes, marking Cain as a sign of his protection against any lethal retaliation. This divine intervention not only ensures Cain's survival, but also attests to God's continued mercy, even in the face of human errors. Here emerges a provocative question, fueling the curiosity of the most inquisitive. Who might these others be who could aim for Cain's life? If Cain and Abel were the only known children of Adam and Eve, where would these potential threats come from? This point prompts a deep reflection on the narratives and primeval lineages of humanity. As we delve into Genesis chapter 4, more specifically verses 16 and 17, we are led to the continuation of Cain's saga. Despite wandering under the stigma of a nomad, he encounters a woman and establishes a marital bond, from which Enoch is born, marking the beginning of a new offspring for Cain. This moment represents not only Cain's survival after divine penalty, but also his ability to establish roots and move forward. With impressive willpower, Cain takes the initiative to build a city, naming it in honor of his son Enoch. This urban center is not only a refuge but also an emblem of overcoming and a testament to humanity's unyielding ability to transcend the adversities of the past. This decision reflects Cain's commitment to found a legacy and a community, breaking free from the limitations of his wandering condition. However, here we encounter an enigma. The sacred text is sparing in details about Cain's wife. Genesis 4:17 informs us only that Cain knew his wife, leaving a veil of mystery about her origin. This fuels the theory that perhaps there were other human beings besides Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel, sparking an intriguing debate about the origins and expansion of the human race in the early days. In this context of doubts and speculations, a wide range of interpretations arises, each attempting to elucidate these mysteries. A less orthodox perspective suggests the possibility that God may have created other human beings independently, apart from Adam and Eve's lineage. Proponents of this idea argue that for the rapid population expansion described, a larger population base than could be provided solely by the direct descendants of the first couple would be essential. This view seeks to reconcile biblical accounts with archaeological and anthropological findings that point to the existence of extensive and ancient human communities. However, it is vital to emphasize that such interpretation is based on conjecture and does not have direct grounding in the scriptures. The book of Genesis primarily focuses on the lineage of Adam and Eve, with no clear mention of other human groups that could coexist during that period. In contrast to this view, the traditionally accepted theory suggests that Cain may have found a partner among his possible sisters, an explanation that aligns more closely with the genealogical and narrative focus of the sacred text. An analysis based on understanding cultural practices and historical context, as outlined in the biblical narrative, offers us an enlightening perspective. Interestingly, the book of Genesis does not explicitly limit the offspring of Adam and Eve to only Cain and Abel. The lack of details opens the door to conjecture that the primordial couple may have had more descendants not specifically recorded in the scriptures. The central argument of this hypothesis is anchored in the notion that families during that period were notably numerous, and that individuals enjoyed exceptional longevity. For example, the long life of Cain, as mentioned in the scriptures, suggests that Adam and Eve could have generated a vast offspring, including sons and daughters who were not individually mentioned in the sacred text. This viewpoint receives considerable reinforcement upon closer investigation of the book of Genesis. Specifically, in chapter 5, verse 4, we find a clear mention that Adam had other sons and daughters besides Cain, Abel, and Seth. This mention dispels any doubt about the presence of a wider offspring, offering a solid substrate for the interpretation that Adam and Eve were indeed ancestors of an extensive lineage. In this cultural and historical panorama, marital union between siblings was not only tolerated, but also seen as essential for the spread of humanity in its early stages. The early stages of human history did not present clear prohibitions against marriage between close relatives, and cultural peculiarities, along with the demands of survival, possibly guided such practices. The biblical narrative illustrates this absence of prohibitions through various stories in which characters marry their relatives. A prominent example is that of Abraham and Sarah, who shared the same father and were therefore half-siblings. Similarly, Isaac, son of Abraham, wedded Rebekah, his second cousin following the customs of his era. These unions, besides being culturally validated, were often blessed and supported by divine providence. Particularly revealing is the episode described in Genesis 24, where Abraham, eager to secure a suitable wife for Isaac, sends a servant to Paddan Aram to find a companion within his family circle. The providential encounter of the servant with Rebekah at a well culminates in her choice as the ideal consort for Isaac, reaffirming the practice and acceptance of marriage between close relatives in that period. This passage not only illuminates the common practice of marriages between relatives in that era, but also underscores the relevance given to the perpetuation of the family legacy. Additionally, the story emphasizes a belief in divine guidance in such marital unions, as reflected in the episode where Rebekah's choice is seen as an act of divine providence. An emblematic example of marriages between relatives is observed post-diluvian. According to sacred writings, after the vast flood, Noah, along with his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, receives the divine mission to repopulate the earth. With the population drastically reduced, the descendants of Noah find themselves faced with the only alternative of marrying among themselves, or possibly with their sisters, to comply with the heavenly decree of multiplication and restoration of the earthly population. The book of Genesis, in chapter 9, emphasizes the charge given to Noah and his offspring to rebuild humanity, highlighting the divine purpose behind these unions, which, from the perspective of that time, were seen as indispensable and justifiable for the survival and prosperity of the human race. Such narratives show that in different biblical eras, marriage between blood relatives was not only tolerated, but considered vital for the preservation of the human lineage. It is fascinating to note that, after a series of significant events, restrictions on marriage between close relatives, as outlined in the Mosaic law, only came to light much later, about 2,500 years after the existence of Adam and Eve. This milestone represents a crucial transformation in the matrimonial norms of the time. The legislations introduced with the Covenant of Moses reflect a growing need for social structuring in a period when the human population began to expand significantly. The prohibition established in the laws delivered to Moses is interpreted as a divine intervention aimed at safeguarding humanity against the adversities that could emerge from marriage between blood relatives, especially as human communities grew and diversified. The promulgation of these norms aimed at preserving genetic integrity and preventing problems related to endogamy. Divine guidance regarding the prohibition of marriage between relatives is meticulously outlined in the book of Leviticus. In chapter 18, there is a detailed list of prohibitions covering a wide spectrum of family ties, issuing clear guidelines against union and intimate relations with parents, siblings, uncles, nephews, and other direct relatives. These commandments not only reflect the evolution of matrimonial practices, but also demonstrate a care to preserve the health and well-being of future generations. The book of Leviticus, a crucial element of the scriptures, serves as a concrete manifestation of the covenant made with Moses, highlighting divine zeal for meticulousness in the regulations of family relationships. It is important to emphasize that interpretations of these texts are subject to wide variations and are the subject of intense debate among different religious traditions and theological currents. The reading and understanding of these passages may change according to cultural context, adopted perspective, and doctrinal lines of each group. However, it is vital to emphasize that, despite varied interpretations, There is a consensus on reverence and non-contestation of divine will. Respect for traditions and surrender to divine guidance emerge as essential pillars, reinforcing the idea that true understanding arises from faith and surrender to the Word of God. The book of Leviticus, with its richness of guidelines and commandments, not only structures community and religious life, but also invites us to reflect on the nature of holiness in everyday life. By detailing laws on purity, sacrifices, sacred festivals, and ethical behavior, Leviticus reminds us that spiritual life permeates all aspects of human existence. Moreover, by studying Leviticus and its meticulous instructions, we can extract lessons about the importance of order, discipline, and respect for traditions that connect us with past generations. These connections teach us to value not only our spiritual heritage, but also the importance of transmitting it with integrity to future generations. In the contemporary context, Leviticus may seem distant or strange in its specificity. However, looking beyond the surface, we find universal themes of justice, mercy, respect, and community. These themes resonate in various spiritual traditions and offer a common ground for inter-religious dialogue and mutual understanding. The practice of reflection and study of scriptures, as taught by Leviticus, is not merely academic. It is an exercise in introspection and spirituality that challenges us to consider our own lives in the light of divine principles. This reflection invites us to question how we can live more just, compassionate, and sacred lives. Viewing Leviticus and, by extension, the entire scripture as a guide for spiritual development allows us to extract wisdom and guidance for modern life. Thus, biblical laws and commandments transcend their historical context and speak to us about ethics, morality, and the search for a greater purpose in our existence. As we navigate together through the deep waters of tradition and wisdom contained in the book of Leviticus, we explore not only the essence of divine laws, but also touch upon how they intertwine with the fibers of our existence and spiritual evolution. Together, we discover that each word, each law, and each shared story invites us to reflect on our own values and how we conduct our lives and relationships. If you have felt the call to explore further, to discover and connect with these eternal truths, I invite you to join our growing community. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, leave your like, and share this video. Your interaction is the flame that illuminates our path in this collective exploration of the divine and the human. Until the next video.